Warriors, this is the Spartan Underground. And now, your host, James 300 Foster.
This episode of the Spartan Underground podcast is brought to you in honor of and loving memory of Professor Keith Owen, gone way too soon from this earth, a great mentor, a very close friend of mine, one of the biggest supporters of this podcast and a major inspiration behind it. Keith was actually the first episode of this podcast. I highly recommend you go check that out. It's filled with a lot of knowledge and inspiration, and we'll give you just a small hint of what an amazing man he was. Love you, Keith. I'll carry you with me forever. Welcome back, Spartan Warriors. This is the first episode back since November 29th of 2019. Hopefully the first new episode of many to come. This episode features my longtime friend, John Garnett. This episode may be a little deceiving at first without context because we talk about John's successes in Hollywood, working for Dr. Phil, working on the Ellen Show, being on the Paramount and Warner Brothers lots, working for Seth Green and Robot Chicken. And then it takes somewhat of a dark turn, because truly this episode is focused on mental health and how one can come from such a great place and with almost a flip of a switch, go to a place of darkness and despair. John had been hiding these issues from everyone aside from his family for the past 5 to 7 years. Unbeknownst to me, he had been struggling. I just thought he was busy. We happened to reconnect close to the beginning of the pandemic and started this journey together. And part of this journey has been acceptance and bringing things out into the open and dealing with this struggle together, which is why John wanted to go out of his way to make this public and not hide anymore. Our hope is that this podcast will help others who have been struggling similarly. Please keep in mind, neither one of us are medical professionals, although he does have an immense amount of knowledge on the subject due to researching into trying to figure out how he could fix these problems that he was dealing with. And I, in helping him, have learned a lot as well. So without further ado, here is the episode featuring my great friend, John Garnett. Welcome to the Spartan Underground. I am James 300 Foster. It has been a very long time since we kicked the podcast off. Many years delayed. Coming back with our new episode. It's March 29th, 2022. And I am here with my, I would say almost a lifelong friend. It's been a really long time.
Long.
Since about what, 2004?
2004. I don't know if it was the spring or the fall, but yeah, Pierce College.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The life before becoming a full-time jiu-jitsu instructor.
Right. You were the guy that was training or giving me cameras for class. And
correct. Yeah. Little side note for people who maybe haven't heard this before. I ran a multimedia lab at a community college for many years. Right. And like any good friendship, my friendship with John started with accusations of theft.
I'm glad we're finally putting this on the public record. Yeah.
So maybe we talk a little bit about that.
Wow.
And kind of
we're getting heavy right now. like how it happened?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about how it happened. And
All
like,
right.
and because you have to start the story. I was just being a college student.
You were a student. You were in the video class.
Yep. And I was a little, it's strange. We were with our mutual friend Josh,
Yep.
and he was another film student. And I just remember being in the film, what do we call it? The multimedia lab, the fish tank or
Sandbox.
the sandbox.
Fish tank.
And, well, because it was all windows, right? And so everybody, and it was like in the middle of the library.
Yes.
So whenever somebody like walked by, you just sort of got stared at, like, and like people almost like they were tapping on the glass and like, how do you get in there?
Yeah.
I'm like, gotta have a pass, right? But so I just was like editing my music videos and things, and then I leave to go back to class, and then I get a security guard, this big bulky dude, and was it your boss?
No, that wasn't my boss. That was the actual security guy.
There was two.
Right.
There was two guys, right? Okay, so it was maybe head of security and his muscle, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And so we were just like standing there, and he's like, "We need to talk to gets a piece of paper out and goes, John Garnett and Josh." I'm like, and I was just like, okay. So then they put us into the sweat room, the interrogation room, which is across the hallway from our classroom, and they're like, and it's almost like the smoke came in, the light came down.
They put the light from the desk right in your face.
He's sitting there with a cigarette, and he's like, "No, let's talk." You know, it was Joker and Batman kind of feeling.
It was.
And he sits us down, and he says something about, "Now we know you got it, right?" Like, and he goes, "And we know it's you, right?
Yeah.
And we need the." It sounded like he said
a card reader or something.
But when he said it, it sounded like he said the flux capacitor, gomgrometer, orchomitis, something.
Yeah.
It sounded so technical. I know he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right.
Because I don't know what he's talking about.
Nobody knew.
Yeah. And so.
But it sounded provocative.
But it was a card reader of some sort.
Yeah, I think it was actually like one of these for people that are.
Yeah, can we show it into the
people
camera?
that are watching the
Right.
video on YouTube. Like a memory card reader, because back then most computers didn't have built-in ones, and you had to have something like this that was separate to be able to read the cards from the cameras that you would rent to take pictures or whatever.
And that thing was sort of, I guess, on the side of the monitors or something like that, kind of like that. So I never really paid attention to it. I wasn't really good. I was good behind the camera.
Yep.
And my friends and everything like that were good with the technical parts. So I literally didn't know what the hell he was talking about. And he comes up and he just kind of like, "Where is it?"
Yep.
And what's my answer? Where's what? And he goes, "The card reader manometer."
Like any guilty person.
Right, exactly.
What card reader?
And then he goes, and then the beautiful part where he says it enough times where he says, "Don't play dumb with me." And I go, "Sir, I'm just dumb." Right? And and so Josh had to be like, the thing on this. He doesn't sound like this, but
Well, he kind of did.
The thing on the set. But but he had to like say it for me, and I was like, "I never seen that." And goes, "Well, this is it." And then I don't know where it kind of got spotty to where like how they found out, because you had to like go, "Oh, I found it," right?
No,
so now
I didn't find it.
Okay, now you take the story.
Right.
What
Because
happened?
Where the connection with me is I would have been the one who checked the equipment out.
Yep.
And you and Josh were the last people in my recollection who had last checked that item out.
Ah.
And then it went missing and never got checked back into me.
Right.
So when my boss was looking for that, because he needed to use it,
Right.
it was gone mysteriously. So
And so you were just
put
like
the puzzle together.
Yeah.
It's like who last had it,
and
right?
we weren't that close.
No.
And so, and this was, just a couple, I don't know if it was a couple weeks or.
No, I think our only interactions had just been when I initially came into that class and introduced who I was and,
Right.
Gave the spiel to the students
Right.
about where you check the equipment out for the class and how you can come use the multimedia
I
lab.
remember you came in with a trifold of something.
something official. And the long and short of it was you didn't steal it. And it was
Ever
actually my boss that misplaced it, and it got found, and then he did apologize to you guys, if I remember correctly.
In a roundabout way. Yeah, he kind of said, "Remember that really uncomfortable thing where you thought you're going to get kicked out of school?" Like, sorry.
Yeah.
Right? And then just walked away. I'm like, cool. And I actually didn't have anything wrong with you at that point. I was just like, you were just doing your job, right? So. Yeah. It was just sort of, but that was definitely our first test into good friendship. So
yeah, and we interacted more because you would come in and need help, with certain video editing stuff and things like that, and we started to hang out a little bit outside of my work and everything.
We'd get some burgers and stuff.
I was in some of your movie making stuff, some of your films and things.
Well, you were the best cast.
I was always the bully, big, scary looking guy.
We're always looking for that, and it seemed like it's like, oh, James will do it. James has got the cool car. Let's do it, right? James has got the house. Let's do it. So it was always kind of fun that we
use me.
I mean, we were trying to make you a star, James, right? You unfortunately went ahead of us and made yourself a star. And we're still trying, but.
So our friendship developed over that period, and I think it would be helpful more to kind of, you're one of the most interesting people I know, and this podcast is going to take a big turn today because this isn't probably what
not like a horror movie, but yeah,
not what it's sounding like it's going to be about at this point. But just trying to establish a little more of the back history with us, and I think it'd be valuable to let people know kind of your history in the music industry, some of your film stuff, all of these things. That's kind of, the most I've known about you coming up was that you were really into writing, that you had managed a bunch of bands and done that type of thing. So maybe just a little history on how you got into that type of stuff, and then we can do our horror story plot twist.
Our M. Night Shyamalan thing. Without getting too, gloating, floating my own boat or gloating, I was always creative in school, right? I loved imagination. I loved creative writing. My behavior was always kind of an issue, though. I was expelled from schools, and never for fighting, just for pissing the teacher off, right? If I don't want to encourage kids, but if you take popcorn seeds to your class and just start throwing them randomly throughout the hallways or at people, you're going to get expelled, right?
Most likely.
I figured that out.
Not going to go over
right.
well.
If you start vandalizing the books, just writing your own version of that history book, you're going to get expelled. I found almost every way to get expelled or get in detention. But I always had those teachers who saw something a little underneath the surface. And there was one time in 6th grade, I got invited to UW to speak to the campus, to their college for creative writing because of a story I'd written. And then the principal took me aside and says, because of all your, detentions and things like that, you're on honor level 4. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, that means you can't go any field trips. So I'm like, so you're not going. I'm like, but I won this thing. You're not going. I'm like, so I'm learning consequence right away, right? So there was things like that. I also didn't make friends well, right? I was very introverted. I loved music. I self-taught myself music. I wanted to be a musician most of my life, up until 20s and stuff like that. Still do music. I play guitar, piano, I could play the drums, and the fun of it was not knowing how to read music, right? It always felt like a puzzle, and so... and I'm pretty good, right? You've seen me play and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's, and it still continues to be a little therapeutic to do it and songwrite. And so I got into being introverted, and then I started learning about email, right? Again, being able to say my creative voice, but talk to somebody. It's the best of both worlds now.
Yeah.
And so what year do you think email kind of got popular?
Popular would have been kind of with AOL.
97, 98?
I want to say maybe it was a little more widely available to your average person around that time.
Okay.
We don't have a Jamie
Right, Jamie, will you throw that up?
Or
of
today
when,
we don't even have an Amy.
We could just pretend he's behind the camera and be like,
hey,
oh.
Can you look that? And then they see me on here looking it up.
And then we'll just kind of look like this, like, okay. Oh. Yeah, there's a huge screen behind the camera.
Huge. 35-foot projection screen.
At least.
At least.
But so when email kind of got famous, I would start emailing, radio DJs, right? And there was a guy named Andy Savage who was on 107.7 The End here, and it's still a huge station, and he was the morning guy, and he just started. And so I started emailing him these jokes and things like that for his radio show, and he would just read them. And I don't know where it is, it's some box. I have hours and hours and hours of him just reading my stuff on the air. And so for some reason, I think with his show, and especially his producers, there's a guy named Steve, his last name's Migolordi, but he was Steve the producer, and people now would know him as Stephen Miggs from the BJ Shea Show. Okay. He was just the producer, right? He wasn't even allowed to touch a mic sometimes in some of the beginning.
Right.
And so he was the guy who opened the door for me, and so he was new to Seattle. And so they would be reading my stuff on the show, and I was just like, I can't believe they know who John Garnett is. Like, I was going to high school at this time, right? And so eventually this happened to the point where the guy, this guy Andy, kind of invited me up, right, to his studio. I'm gonna go to the End, right?
Right.
Where all of my, Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, like all my idols, like hang out here. And I show up, and he kind of looks me over a bit, and he's like, I thought you were like 35, right? And I go, I'm like 16, right? My mom drove me, right? Yeah. I literally was like that. And there's a picture of it. I don't know if you can add pictures to this.
I can.
Okay, yeah.
Through the miracles of modern technology.
Right. Jamie, go ahead and throw that picture up. But there's things like that where I was just like getting confidence in my voice. And so he's like, and then at the end of the day, he's like, you should just come back every week. I'm like, what? Yeah. Right. And then he would bring me on the air. And so I was just saying this before we started, like, it felt like we were going on the air, right? It kind of felt like,
Very
those old
similar,
days. Yeah. And that got me into wanting to get into radio production and music producing. So go to college for that. I started getting into, wanting to be a musician still. And then I started reaching out, emailing to record labels, right? And there was these things called street teams. Street teams are promotion teams for record labels, and they give, kids, free concert tickets and sometimes a little money to go promote the show, right? To get, the street cred going on it. And so there were some bands that not a lot of people knew at the time, like Korn, Incubus, Jared Leto's 30 Seconds to Mars. I was just sort of hanging out with these guys like, hey, what's up, guys? Right? And they're like, hey, man, like, and like, want to get on the bus? I'm like, what do you guys do on the bus? I'm like, you're going to find out. Like, and so it was sometimes like, like Ozfest, right? Backstage at Ozfest. I'm like, I was in doing that stuff. I was at the Hard Rock with Pantera, right? And like we were all playing blackjack. I was 19, I think, at this time. And I remember my boss from the record label, this record label called Immortal Records, said, he goes, let's go play blackjack. And I go, you guys, I can't. And I'm going to use this voice because it just paints a picture better. Yeah. I can't because, not 21. And he's like, and so he downs a beer bottle and he says, hold this, right? And he's like, but cover the label and just act like you're about to drink it. So, and he's like, hey, it actually worked. You can walk any Las Vegas room, right?
Not that we're
condoning it, but you can walk any Las Vegas, hotel room back there or floor, right? The gambling floor. If you just hold that beer bottle, there's nothing in it, so you're not open contain. So we're like, ooh, we've hacked the system here. Right. And I'm watching like Pantera, and I'm trying to think of who else was there. I remember Tommy Lee and stuff like that. They're all just like and it was kind of cool. It was like Disturbed back in the day, Slipknot, So there was a lot of cool experiences with that. And then I started meeting a lot of other people. There was a girl named Jen who worked for Roadrunner Records, who I became friends with, and she was amazing. Like, just like knowing and going up to there and going out to New York And then when I got a taste of the New York scene, my dad lives on the East Coast, lives in Jersey. So I moved to Jersey when I was about 20 years old. And doing that, I was just like, I was sort of jealous that Jen had a job at a record label, and I didn't really have anything. I didn't even really I had dropped out of high school.
Right.
So I went and got my GED before I left. I go out there, and I'm now like in New York with the GED and trying to figure out how to get a job at like NBC and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that, and just doing side jobs and promotion jobs. I would once in a while like promote I was a manager at a record store for a while, and it was just kind of always ballooning into the next thing. And then when and I guess we could talk about this. Something happened in New York in 2001, right, where things changed.
Yeah.
Perspective changed.
Big time.
And you wake up because and it's 9/11.
Yeah.
Right. And I did not experience 9/11 like most people did. I watched it, right?
Yeah.
But from the beach,
Yeah.
right? Not from the television. And that was a holy S moment, right? Where it's just like, because I was in New York at the night before, right? And I remember you take the New Jersey Transit bus out of the Lincoln Tunnel, and for East Coast people, you kind of know you take that loop. It kind of goes out the tunnel, and you kind of loop along the coast, and you can see the skyline,
right.
the city line, I think, and the Twin Towers are pretty much right there, and so I remember looking at those Twin Towers on September 10th. And I seen them, working in the city and stuff like that. And I just remember seeing the tops of them looked identical as far as level.
Yeah.
The corners of them looked identical. And I said something stupid where I said, they're almost like Twin Towers.
Yeah,
Almost, right?
Yeah. How
So
ironic.
then I go, click, right?
Yeah.
And it works. And so I definitely was just like, wow, that's amazing. And then the next morning,
Yeah.
you're getting 20 phone calls, and you run down to the beach, and it's just right across the water, and you see this black smoke just like, stretching all like miles and miles. I never even seen something connect that long.
Yeah.
And you're hearing F-14s like all over thing. And then you're watching this fire, and you can't comprehend it, right?
Yeah.
Until you see something worse happen where, because of how far away I was, you would see this like a mushroom cloud, like it would build from the bottom and sort of go up, and it would build it, and all you would hear was this,
Yeah.
like you would hear the echo of
Yeah.
the fall. And that was like, and then I was just like, what was that? And they go, that was the next build. And it was just elbow to elbow people. And that was, and kind of connecting this to everything, that was the first like thing of like anxiety,
Okay.
right? Where I was just like, how lucky are we?
Right.
Where are we in life? Like, and when I saw how people were next to me and so loving, and everybody remembers 9/11, especially, anywhere you were, but especially on in that state, on that East Coast.
And just how united everybody became for that brief
Yes.
period of time in the wake of all of that.
Yep. And so we kind of stayed in that, but we were all scared, right? And we all didn't know. And so at that point, I said, I don't want to work in the city again. I had gotten a couple jobs with NBC. I worked for Fear Factor, with Rogan and stuff like that. I was a PA for them. And then I got a job with Playboy magazine, like doing casting calls and stuff like that. Not as glamorous as what people may think. Like, you saw the models come in, but they went into a separate room. I was the guy who handed them the, like, please put your name here, right?
Yeah.
And so
'Cause you were still 16 at that point.
no, I was 20 years old at that point. But yeah,
talk like
my
that?
my voice didn't crack until like this afternoon, right? But it was definitely, I still felt very young and naive.
Right.
Then I go into college, and I really and I know it kind of seems like I already was in college or anything like that. I did some radio in college, but it was called Running Start, right? And so that's why I never got my full, high school diploma because so I go into college. I go into actually like music production, and I do that for a while. And the East Coast kind of feels a little stale at this point. So I moved back to Washington, and that's kind of around the pocket, where I meet you.
Right.
And the reason I was in film production is because I was trying to do more music production.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't know what you call them, career counselors, but they go, Mr. Garnett, you can't do this all because we don't have it. You've already done it. You have to pick another elective. So I was like, what am I supposed to do? They hand me this thing, and it just says, just fine elective. And so I'm flipping, and it said, digital filmmaking, learn to make, your own short films, documentaries, and music videos. Like, I'm so dumb, John. Of course you're going to have to record your own music videos. You're going to be a rock star, right?
Right.
So I'm like, okay, that's why some of my stuff was music video in the beginning.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so I was just like, easy decision. I go into that class, and I still remember it, and you saw this too, where I would start filming something and editing it, and then it was just like munchkins a little bit before. They would just all start gathering around.
Yeah.
And like looking into the screen, and everybody was saying, how did you do that?
Yeah.
How did you do what? Right? I'm like, you don't see it this way?
It's a little different vision that you had in comparison to
compared to
most your average film students at that time.
Yeah. And so that was you got something here, kid, go with this.
Yeah.
So I sort of put down the guitar and the songwriting and met up with some, our friend Josh and stuff like that, and started collaborating with other filmmakers and really getting a good sense of what a good film is. I was always good with poetry and songwriting, but can you do it with dialogue, right?
Yeah.
And creative writing? Can you create scenes, and can you create imagery? And so now it's like the best of both worlds, and that turned into, what's this Hollywood place I'm hearing about? And so I eventually, I transferred to Evergreen. I did a bunch of, programs there in theater and arts. I had some excellent professors there. And I just kind of, went to Hollywood. I don't remember how I told you I was moving to Hollywood. Was it just like a, hey, James, you know?
Yeah, I kind of think it was. I know you had been along the journey with you. I'd come to... when you were awarded for the local film festival you won and things like that, and following your journey. And I think it was kind of like, hey, I'm gonna go for it. I want to be a writer. I want to move to Hollywood. I want to really go all in with this.
It was so quick.
Yeah.
And because especially when I won that film festival, it's the Grand Cinemas Film Festival. And I guess that's now the Tacoma Film Festival.
Yeah.
But when we won Best Picture, I just remember, because you went to that, right? And I just remember when we, oh man, it's so embarrassing. I know filmmakers out there feel this too, because I act in my stuff too.
Yeah.
And I write my stuff, I score my stuff, I film my stuff. It's so egotistical. And it's just like, and so I'm sitting there, and I did a film called In Focus, and I remember hearing my score come in, and I just sunk in my seat. I'm like, look how big my eye is. Like, because it's on the big screen. And I was just like, oh, God. And so I started watching everybody. And I remember during that experience watching everybody, and everybody was clapping during the other ones, the short films. We didn't get any claps. And all I sat was like, oh, they didn't get it. They didn't get it, right? I'm so stupid. I'm this. Again, and we'll talk about this too, self-talk.
Yes.
Right? And what that does to your confidence, right? And doing something like that. And so I was just like, they didn't get it. I'm stupid. I'll never do this. I'm not a good filmmaker. I don't know what I'm thinking. And then when the best film came up, I looked around because they said our name, and I go, who the hell?
Yeah.
It was like, what?
Yeah.
Literal shock, right? And I got pictures that night too. But when I did that, I just remembered sort of seeing when you got to go up to the stage, and it was the Rialto Theater, right?
Yeah.
Pretty packed place.
Pretty big deal.
Yeah, and I just remember I saw Jack Nicholson. I saw Denzel Washington. I hopefully will never see Will Smith, but it's one of those feelings like I
Very
saw...
relevant to the time we're in right now.
So But I saw those people in those seats, right? And when I was up there, and again, you hear that voice, go for, do this, kid.
You had the vision.
Yeah, and so like a dum-dum, I start just emailing again, everybody in Hollywood. Can I work for you? Can I do this? And I remember being in a Port Orchard Goodwill parking lot, and I get a call from Paramount Pictures saying they're doing a movie with Owen Wilson called Drill Bit Taylor, right? And can you come to L.A.? I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it was surreal, right? And I go, yeah. And he's like, can you be here Friday? It's Tuesday or something like that. And I was like,
I remember it was a real quick.
Yeah. I go, yes.
Yeah.
Right? And that was it. And so I drive down there with my mom, and, we're sleeping at rest stops and things. And I just remember, like, going in for that interview and stuff like that. And I remember I worked for a casting department, and there was this lady named Jewel Bestrop. And Jewel had worked with Ben Stiller, and she did Zoolander, Starsky and Hutch. She did The Hangover, right? And so it's like that. So there was just like all these posters on the wall, right? A dodgeball, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, what? This is the coolest place. And like celebrities were like in the files, and they're like, and they loved me. And so I stayed there, and I did a movie called Drill Bit Taylor. I did Blades of Glory with Will Ferrell, and then I did Fool's Gold with Matthew McConaughey. And that was cool because I think I told you, they gave me the script of Blades and Glory 2 years before it went out. I was like, I can't even believe I get the Will Ferrell script in my hands. I can just read it.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about it.
And so here I am. I'm in my prime at this point, and I'm thinking this is it. So I get a lot of great opportunities, and I know I'm going on and on here, but and so I kind of go to that. I work for Dr. Phil because I wanted to work on the Paramount lot.
Yep.
I meet a great guy named Paul Casey who now directs Bill Maher. And I see what a director looks like. I talk to him, and I'm learning live television, and it's great. And then from there, I again an email from a kid who just likes this show that you turned me on to called Robot Chicken, and I was just like, I remember being in a Best Buy, and I said, what should I watch? I was into DVDs, and you're like, you should watch Robot Chicken, and you even said like, you should go find Seth Green. Yeah. And I was just like, how do you find Seth Green? He's in the internet, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You just have to know the person who knows the person. And I went from not knowing how the hell you do that to sitting in his office. Yeah. And there he is. And there's a guy named Matt Senreich who created the show. I'm like, and they're just talking to me. And I actually interviewed to be their assistant, right?
Believe it or not, they're all just regular people.
Totally.
Yeah.
That was so cool. Well, he pulled a Nerf gun on me during the interview. And so, but one of the things and why I'm so close to you is before I went into that interview, I was always so nervous, right? And I'd say, James, I'm about to go in.
Yeah, need some good luck.
And we used to call it Spirit of House Cat.
Yeah, it was like the totems, like in, oh gosh, why am I blanking on the
I'm trying to remember
Andy
the ref.
Sandberg. Hot Rod,
that's right.
Yeah, they would do the little tomes before he did his stunts, and
right.
One of them was Power of House Cat.
Right. And okay, great.
So we did Spirit of House Cat,
and it was Spirit of House Cat.
It worked.
It worked, and there I am in the door, right? And then I brought you down there, and like here it is, like. My buddy's like, I'm telling him about it, and now I'm like getting this grand tour of like seeing everything animated. And
I would come down and visit. Usually, if I was down there training or competing, we would always reconnect, even though we had that distance between us. We would talk on the phone like almost every day. I think
Xbox, Gears of War,
playing Gears of War, and kind of from there, you ended up was Ellen show after that. Yes.
Warner Brothers.
Brothers lot.
Yep. And so when I started off as a tour guide there, and when you're a tour guide, you're actually something almost like public relations because you're a tour guide, but you're also called a page, a studio page. And so whenever there's audience needs or anything like that, or you kind of get called in. So some day you're doing old tours, some days you're just working on Ellen or anything like that. You're also working for 2.5 Men and Big Bang Theory. was filming on the lot too.
Did
so
Ellen ever make you wear a bag on your head or any abusive things?
no, she was the sweetest.
I've heard some things.
Ellen was the sweetest. She was funny, right?
Let's not start any rumors then.
No. I the only rumor I have, like Charlie Sheen. Remember the whole Tiger Blood thing and everything like that? Sweetest dude, right?
Yeah.
Used to smoke cigarettes in front of his Ferrari. Like, he was kind of really cool. And then when Big Bang Theory came out, first of all, I want to publicly apologize to Big Bang Theory. When I went on that set and met these guys and then heard about the premise, two nerds like the, good, and they're also trying to do it. It's like, it's the Big Bang Theory. I'm like,
never gonna work.
This is gonna be like 4 episodes. No, right?
Exactly.
No. But Jimmy Parsons and Kaylee and everything like that, so sweet to me. And then, but that Johnny Galecki, he can eat one, right? Like, I don't like that kid. He and I kind of like, we're always just like at odds of things. I won't get too much into it.
I'm sure he's not going to listen to this, so.
Johnny, I still don't like you, right? Stay away, bro. And it's funny because he plays that character on an episode of Entourage, where he's always like, like being a jerk and an asshole. But then Seth Green also played one like that, totally opposite.
Yeah,
but
totally.
No, I don't know. But anyway, so I never really had a celebrity nemesis or anything
except for that one.
Right.
But then we came to this point where I feel like we were down there. You ended up working at the DGA.
Yep, the Directors Guild.
I want to say that was that 2008?
2009.
2009
to 2010, yeah.
And that was kind of one of the, I want to say it was one of the real last times I came down there and we hung out. I remember we got that picture of Amy and I in front of the Hulk poster.
At the ArcLight Cinema.
At the ArcLight and all of that. And then kind of, we kind of lost touch for a little bit.
Totally.
And I just kind of assumed that you were still doing your thing and we're busy and all of this type of stuff.
Yeah, I also kind of got involved with friends. I had a girlfriend at the time. I think I kind of got more into the partying of it, right? And I was trying to live too late.
Yeah.
And it was and I always said if I ever moved down to LA or something like that, like go to the beach more, right?
Yeah.
Meditate more. Connect with people more. I was always like pushing people away. I need to write. You don't understand. Everything has to be perfect. The script has to be perfect or I don't get the perfect life that I want in the perfect way.
Yeah. And being willing to do anything to get where you wanted to get, whether that meant being truthful or going off that path and manipulating things. And, you hear about this a lot with Hollywood stuff. It's kind of like fake it till you make it, do what you need to do type of thing.
I drove a nice car.
And I remember you'd tell me things like, hey, I kind of, fibbed on that resume or this or that, but it worked.
Absolutely.
Like I got in.
Yep.
And
you embellish things just because it's so cutthroat, right?
And like you said, it was all about getting that little step ahead. You didn't appreciate it. You didn't appreciate what you had when you were there. You were so caught up in that, trying to get that next step ahead, get that next accolade, make it, this next showpiece as far as what you had achieved.
Yes, almost like when like I was downstairs looking at your trophies, right? These are things you earn, but these aren't things you polish.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
These are things that go on the wall, right? And you're proud of them, but they're not something you stare and make people look at, right?
Yeah.
I was always like, I need the next thing. I need my award, right?
Right.
But I didn't know why I needed it, right? I thought because I wasn't worth it. I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And one thing I've always learned from you is the failure is the process.
Yeah.
Right. You were just telling one of your students because we kind of rolled today or trained. I don't know. I'm trying to be cool, people.
He's got the lingo down already.
When I said when you were kind of rolling with Gracie's, like they were very skilled, right?
Oh,
and you were just kind of like
you were on Gracie. Yeah. He sang a little. He whistled a little tune the whole time I sparred with him.
Yeah.
When I was a brand new black belt,
right.
And he was just toying with me.
Yeah. And so And you said John has seen me, lose more than I've ever won.
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
And so and I've always saw like, there was never a bitterness with you, and it was never something that you felt like you were a failure. You just worked hard at it and understand this thing. So when I was in Hollywood, I never had that mindset that this is a good thing that you're failing because you are trying, right? And when I started to put all that pressure on me, that's where things got bad.
Yeah, and that's when things started to shift. And I remember kind of one of the last times we had really connected, it was like, hey, I'm having to move back.
Yes.
And you were pretty bummed out that because you felt like you'd completely failed. Like I failed at my attempt going down there and being successful.
Yeah, there's a small story behind this change, and it's in 2011, my birthday, my 30th birthday. It was so cliche because I'm here thinking like, what happens when people turn 30? Like they have a midlife crisis. I literally, physically, absolutely did.
Yeah.
And I was drinking on my 30th birthday. I smoked some weed, and I'm around some new friends, and I just am too stoned to walk home. I go home, right, and we kind of she lived around the block. I face down like plant on the bed. I wake up like 9 hours later, and everything's foggy, right? Everything's like blurry a little bit, and I kept saying dream-like, like you hadn't slept that long. So I'm just like, I am hungover.
You're thinking you're still hungover, yeah.
So I go and get some breakfast, some coffee. I come back. I'm just drinking Gatorades. And I fall asleep the whole day. I wake up the next day. I'm still dreamlike, sleepy, foggy, fatigued. I was like, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
I don't realize what's going on. And so I, again, kind of am going through this. Eventually got to the point where I had to go to the ER and saying, like, I don't know if I was drugged or something like that.
Something was in the weed, maybe.
So
whatever.
I got a CAT scan because they thought maybe you fell on your head. You didn't know. And then I just kept getting this look like, you're fine. You don't even have all the weed in you was so minuscule, it doesn't even show up in a blood test, right? I was like, no, you don't understand. You don't feel real.
Yeah.
And this is where I call it the death happened.
Yeah.
Where I started to try to figure this new existence out of like, I just want to go back till, April 22nd, not April 24th, right? And, the day before my birthday, and not have this feeling anymore.
Yeah.
And this was 2011, right? We're in 2022, right? So I remember I go to another hospital, and they do something called a stroke test where you like, pull your fingers, walk on your toes, anything like that. Physicians will know what this is. And again, blood test,
Nothing
completely
wrong with
fine.
you.
And I go, no, you don't understand, right? There is something wrong, right? And so I was having panic attacks, right? Why now, right? Why this, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure it out. And to the point where I was terrified, right? Scared. I feel like I was going to faint all the time. And I had to, call my mom up and just be like, I don't know how to do this.
Now you, when you did come back here, even with all of that going on, you did manage to, I believe, get a job at a casting agency.
It was
up in Seattle, right?
That was actually like 3 or 4 years after, right?
Okay, so you started feeling this way in 2011, but you still kind of managed a little bit to.
There was something
work through it.
Yeah, with I was having these panic attacks and these random bouts of dizziness. And well, not random, they're continuously happening. I'm experiencing it right now, right?
Yeah.
But I've just learned to, know that it's not killing me, right? And so it's when you're ever feeling like you're overwhelmed or nervous or something where it creates like a dream-like surface, right? Almost like if you were to touch it, it'd be a painting, right? And to get to the reality, that's called derealization. Yeah. And it's something that I didn't know and no physician could figure out.
Most people don't know. I didn't know about it until reconnecting with you.
Mm-hmm. And that was something that I learned in a movie called Numb. Harris Goldberg, I think his name is, a filmmaker, had done a story about his life, who was a Hollywood screenwriter, and he smoked weed one night, and he woke up, and he couldn't, understand what was real life and what wasn't.
So literally your story.
Yeah.
That's spooky.
Yeah. And I emailed that guy,
way,
and he blocked me right away. And he's like, "You're effing with me, right? This is my story, not your." No.
Yeah,
and
you
then
were just trying to find answers at this stage.
I had done acupuncture. I'd done 4 what's it called, MRIs.
Yep.
I did kidney scans, chiropractic. What's the pins?
That's acupuncture.
Yeah, acupuncture. Ear, nose, and throat, vertigo tests, 27 medications. I mean, for years I was trying to do this, right? And then I'm trying to figure out. And then I realized, like, okay, maybe I can just try to do this. And I got more self-involved with being self-employed. And that's what got me into, like, managing bands and stuff like that. And then doing that, there wasn't enough money in it. Yeah. So then that confidence gave me into working at a place over here in Tukwila, where I started running this office of and it wasn't a casting thing, it was more of a talent management thing.
That's right. More of a talent agency type of thing.
And it was a nice office. I had a secretary and everything, got a corner office, right? And
but the
and the pressure of that.
Yeah. Well, kind of, I remember you telling me the big breaking point was basically the head guy being like, "Hey, it's yours. Take it over. You can run
literally.
This."
Yeah. My boss.
I'm taking off.
Yeah, I'm being transferred. You're running the place now. I'm like, I don't even know where the bathroom is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm cutting out. I'm not cutting out.
No.
Okay.
No,
good.
You're good. Levels look good.
All right. So anyway, so when I did that, I just remember so much pressure and having to do, like, public. I'm a little foggy on the word, like, where you stand in front of somebody, give a presentation.
Oh, like a presentation?
Yeah, I guess like a presentation.
Yeah. Like meetings and all that.
Yeah, well, it was more like, here's what our company does, and, there's a bunch of, parents and stuff like that, and actors and actresses, models, all that stuff.
Right.
And I had to make us look good, and I had to, sign people up, things of that nature. And I just remember the fogginess came back, and the tunnel vision came back, and the wobbly feet and the wobbly legs came back.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh no. And then I just started feeling, like, that derealization feeling again. And I go, I don't know how this is happening again. I didn't do anything wrong. Right?
Yeah.
And I want to get back to my life. I want to get back to doing this. And I couldn't figure it out. And so I had to, that place collapsed, kind of folded because I wasn't putting up the numbers.
Yeah.
I kept, trying medications and trying to, like, not come in so oftenly. And no, it just was not.
Nothing
was working. And so at that point, that was 2014. And so since 2014, and I had this sort of breaking moment, that's where, the second death happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings us up to speed with when we really reconnected.
Yes.
And I didn't realize any of this had been occurring.
Right.
John reached out to me kind of in the early part of the pandemic. So
it was about April.
April 2020, right?
Yep.
And basically just reached out, say, hey, how are you doing?
I knew you. I knew you were such a busy person, and I was always so respectful of you and Amy. And I just said, I know James is sitting on his couch, and it drives him crazy because he had always been that go get it. And every time I wanted to reach out to you before, I was like, you're busy. You got your life. You got your wife. You got your school. You got this thing.
And I was thinking the same thing about you back when you were busy in Hollywood and everything else, and kind of when we weren't connecting as often then. And you knew that the with everything, the Seattle area was kind of the epicenter for one of the main COVID outbreaks early in the pandemic with the old folks home up north. And so essentially COVID was taken extremely seriously here, and there was lockdowns and everything. And as a result, unfortunately, jiu-jitsu was one of those things considered to be non-essential when we didn't know much about COVID, and there wasn't a vaccine and all these different things. So you knew that we were locked down, the academy was closed, and you felt, okay, this is my time to reach out. He's not going to be busy.
Yeah, totally.
And I remember I asked you this before. I said, did you reach out to me thinking that I might be able to help you?
Mm-hmm.
And you said, no, I was just reaching out just to check in.
Yeah.
And here I am sitting here not knowing that you've been, in anguish, dealing with all these different things with
about 5 years at that point.
Agoraphobia, derealization,
massive anxiety,
all these things that I never knew about. Yeah, very suicidal. So John reached out to me, and in our conversation, you started, opening up a little more to me about some of these struggles you've been having.
Yeah.
And, the scariest thing for me as your friend was, one, realizing that I didn't know that was going on.
Right.
Two, being a little angry that you hadn't reached out to me sooner when I did find those things were going on. But, realizing just how much you'd been struggling and feeling like you were going to be a burden to others if you reached out.
If they took on
the idea of helping you.
Yes, or even wanting to be that John's friend.
Yeah.
Because, and I know that idea when you said, why didn't you reach out to me, went away when you said, James, nobody.
Yeah, you didn't reach out you wouldn't even talk on the phone with people.
No, I could not talk on the phone. My father, I have not seen my father for all those years at the point. And even, I'm happy to say I'll be seeing my father in a few weeks. It's the first time in 7 years.
Yeah.
I am beyond guilt about how I feel about that.
Right.
And I am beyond guilt about all of my friends, especially you, about taking those years away.
Right.
And I understand that people have to go through hard times, but it was definitely, especially when you saw me for the first time, and I don't even know what went through your mind.
Yeah. No, it was definitely surprising that you had gotten to that point.
Yeah. Because I looked.
Yeah, very different.
Very different than I am today.
And we'll include some pictures on the video of this podcast. But I remember, we talked for quite a bit on the phone, and I was trying to think of ways just to get you back to writing and doing some of the things you loved again. When I figured out that you were agoraphobic, you weren't leaving the house, you couldn't go anywhere, you couldn't talk to anybody.
No.
So we kind of came up with a little idea to work on a comic book project together.
Yep.
That got you writing a little bit. We're still working on that.
Yes.
That's not going away. It's called Subject 99. I'm still chipping
away.
away.
When do we want to put the drop date? Like summer 2099?
If we put a date on here, we might actually finish it.
I know. Yeah.
But John was to the point where the idea of even meeting me in person was like an impossible thing.
Absolutely.
Like the phone call alone was really hard.
Yep.
But when we figured out that, hey, let's meet up. So when we met up, it was literally, I drove over to his house and we sat in lawn chairs in the driveway. Yep. And I brought sandwiches over. Because that was as close
as I was comfortable with.
And that was as close as you were comfortable with. And John had a beard down past his belly and a
about
braid,
to my belt. Yeah.
Like a
not a good beard.
Not a good beard.
No. A crazy as fuck, like dreaded, gnarly, there's animals living in it beard. Yeah.
And we're way bigger than you are right now.
Oh yeah.
You've gained a lot of weight.
I was about 275. Yeah.
And we just sat there and we ate and we talked, and it actually felt surprisingly normal.
It was one of those
But
things.
I remember you looking at me and telling me about the derealization and trying to explain it to me, and you're like, I don't know if you're actually here right now.
Right. Yeah.
Like I don't know if I'm actually talking to you. Like I think this is real. And truly heartbreaking for me to see my friend that way, and somebody I've known since like 2004.
Yeah.
And have all these great memories with, and then it really shows that, all of us, regardless of our successes and our struggles, none of us are that far from getting to that point.
Not even.
And, but we started this journey together a couple of years ago.
Yeah. And it was also, I didn't know.
Oh.
Real
pro
Jamie,
over
go
here.
to commercial right now. Yeah.
Ruin my pop filter here. There we go.
So it was also kind of embarrassing because and I think it was good that we kind of talked about my background because I was always that guy.
Well, we can't get to this without discussing.
I know, right?
The severe contrast with how you were.
Yeah. And
prior to that.
Yeah. I remember.
It's night and day. It's two different people.
I totally agree. And I've always said to you, I wish I could see what you see. I wish you could see what it look. I wish I could. I feel it, but I wish I could have saw it somehow.
Yeah.
And through the pictures and stuff like that, and some video, I knew like you and I could see it, and maybe we could get some other people to see it, or who might be struggling or know somebody who's struggling. But for me, that time, I didn't take much pictures, and I always told people I don't wish to remember this.
Yeah.
I was institutionalized for a while.
And you mentioned medications before. How many different medications did you try, would you estimate?
I took 22 to 25 different meds, right? My physician was always on board with, trying anything. So many side effects were happening.
Yeah.
So there was one, I don't even know what the fuck it is, but I hope no one ever experienced this one. There was one that created electrical pulses if you got startled.
Oh, wow.
And
so
I
felt like you were being shocked?
Yeah, I broke an iPhone that way.
Oh, man.
Because it rang. And it just sounded,
yeah.
right? And you shake, and then I threw it in the air, and then hardwood floors, yeah. And then there was, it was so bad to the point where I went to a physician and talked about electromagnetic stimulation.
Right.
And the only way you can get to that clinic, interview is if you've been through at least 20 medications, right?
Okay.
Or around that. And don't quote me on it, but
they've literally tried everything possible.
Every
they think.
single thing to make you happy or to create less anxiety in your life. That's how awful it was. And so electromagnetic stimulation, you kind of sit in almost like you're getting a perm, and it would just create a pulse on that area.
With a super powerful magnet.
Yep, she goes, it just feels like someone's tapping on that part of your brain.
Yeah.
Right? And you do this 30 minutes for 30 days.
And you did a consultation on this. You never did the actual treatment.
I couldn't.
Because now, when we say that you were a lot of suicidal thoughts, like one of the hardest things for me in getting to know you again and going through this was you would tell me all the time within that first year that come New Year's of 2020, you were going to kill yourself.
Yes.
And you would, constantly reiterate that, probably more than you even realize.
Yep.
Hey, James, when I do this, I don't want you to think there was anything more you could have done. I don't want you to feel bad.
That was it.
And you had it on your calendar, and that was the plan. And so literally you were trying everything you could, but that you kind of,
it was over.
You kind of knew that was the only possible outcome for you. You had accepted that was what you needed.
That was it, right? Nobody knew that, right? That, my doctor knew, that I talked about this. I talked about it a little with my family. You were the only friend I think I mentioned that to. I never told my father. I never told, other friends or anything like that.
And the reason I bring that up is because it comes to back to the story about getting the consultation with the the magnetic therapy, because there was something you asked the doctor about it as far as the success.
Yeah, they said this doctor, this guy who administrates this thing, said that you have to sort of he described it like tuning up a car. He goes, once you get your car going, you don't just let it drive, right? And until it breaks down again, right? You have to come in every 3 to 6 months to do another maybe 4 or 5 days of it. And I said, is it make you really, really happy? And goes, yeah. And goes, what happens if you take that really, really happy and you drop it really fast, right? Because you're so high now. And he goes, well, I wish more people would talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think he told you, like, you were one of the
only
people that had asked him that.
Mm-hmm. And he says, because there are some dangers. And he says, and the dangers I think you're speaking of is suicide. Yeah. And he goes, and I will be honest with you, I had one patient who completed. And the way he said completed, I didn't...
Very clinical.
Yeah, incredibly clinical.
Yeah.
Because everybody's attempted.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's possible. Completed is game over.
Yeah.
Right? And so when he said completed, it really, you know, it was strange how I was so afraid of things because I thought I was going to die, but not afraid of dying on my own hands. Yeah. Right? Because it was my terms. Right? And so when that sort of happened, and then the mind fuck of everything, COVID happened, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, and there's like, here I am like this, and I'm like, because I know you and I connected, and I started to feel like there was a chance.
Yeah.
So I was almost giving you a 3-month pocket that I wasn't probably telling you about.
Yeah.
And then, you know, March happened, and now stay indoors.
Yeah.
Don't see your friends.
Yeah.
Stay away.
I remember you laughing with you were laughing.
Don't go to the movie theaters.
Yeah, when you were talking
no
to
restaurants.
Me, he goes, James, people are rookies, man. I've been doing this for like the past 5 years.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Just stay being you, John.
Yeah.
I'm okay,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, and so it really kind of gave me, and maybe some perspective out there. I'm not going to make fun of anybody who got their social lives taken away, right? Social distancing was now a term.
Yeah.
They were living, right, the very top layer of my dark life, right? And they couldn't handle 30 days of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I was...
Which shows you just how abnormal that is as humans to become comfortable with that feeling or become accepting of that feeling of isolation and loneliness and desperation
and everything. And, you know, and of course, like, not even like just leaving the house. I remember there's a rock path kind of like in front of my my lawn. I had to keep my foot on the lawn part to see if the mail was here. And so I'm gonna move away from the mic, but I would lean like this.
Yeah. And
I would just lean as far as I can get into the road without leaving the lawn.
Yeah,
right?
That was like the perimeter.
Yes. If I ever checked the mail, right, if I saw it, I would bring gum, water, a Bible, and I would say Bible verses. The mailbox was 92 feet away.
Yeah.
I was going to die.
You had to have like a safety kit.
100%. Every place I went to a physician or something like that, I had a big Ziploc bag, and it would have melatonin, aspirin, ibuprofen, essential oils, gum, water. There would be some sort of like natural, like, you know, like brain pills, like gabapentin or something like that. And just like everything, I would carry a cane.
Yeah, you were walking with a cane at one point.
Yeah.
Before I started to work with you.
I bathed once a month. I changed my clothes once a week.
Yeah.
For 5.5 years.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
It was, you know, like my teeth were falling out, my body was going to shit, and I was hiding it all.
Yeah.
And it's because I didn't, like we said, I didn't want to not be the old John. I was proud of the old John.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be this John. You know, not the John I'm becoming today. And we're very honest up front. I am not well today, right?
No.
But as far as recovery,
in comparison,
yeah. The fact that I bathed today is a fucking miracle, right? Like, I trained today.
Yeah.
I'm in your school for the first time in what? 7, 8?
Longer than that, because it was probably back in 2000 and...
Oh, God, yes.
At least 2010.
Yeah, so 12 years,
maybe, probably 12 years.
Like, the fact that I'm here, I'm starting to drive again, right? Which I didn't drive to places. So here I am, and you know, I think just more of like, connections and professionals and maybe friends who didn't really weren't really around my life. It's like like one of my best friends, Chucky. I saw him at the Half Price Books. Remember that?
Yeah.
And he thought I was trying to sell him records.
Yeah.
Because he didn't recognize
you.
me. Right.
Yeah.
That's how horrible I looked. And so the fact, and when you came back into the picture and like we started talking, I was trying to get you into. Remember I was taking like ice showers.
Yeah.
Because again, trying everything.
Yeah.
I was doing Wim Hof
Yep.
and this and that. And I said, ice showers, man. I take 3 ice showers. Like,
Yeah.
look. And I said, you got to take them. And you're, big, tough world champ, right? And you're like, I don't know about this ice shower shit, right?
You were doing it like it was nothing.
Yeah. And so
daily routine for him.
Yeah. And so when we were talking about it, you said, okay, I'll do it, right? But you got to promise me one thing.
Yeah.
You got to go have lunch with me at a restaurant.
Yeah.
I said, nope.
Yeah, you told me I'll never be able to do that.
Never, ever, 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 ever will do that.
You
do
said,
not say it. Don't bring it up.
Well,
again.
you like apologize. You said, James, you're like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like I can't promise
you can't
that.
ask me to fly.
Yeah, you're like, I'm not going to be able to ever. I don't think I'll ever be able to do that.
Nope.
That was so outside the realm of possibility for you.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I do want to touch on before, because I want to start talking about this recovery phase we've been in for the past couple of years now.
Yep.
One of the things you also tried throughout trying everything was eliminating alcohol, like being sober. Like you became sober as a part of this because you realized that the alcohol, like you were drinking how many beers to make it through a day?
Well, it's Pabst Blue Ribbon should have sent me like a lifetime sponsorship because I went through what's called a tall boy, which is a can and a half. I drank 6 of those a day, so I don't know what the math of that is.
Just to maintain being able to function and feel calm enough that you could get through the day.
Yep, and this was me in my apartment, 2013, 2014, and terrified to the point where I'd keep a blanket over my head because it wasn't dark enough. I would drink and drink and drink, right? I'd wait. I'd let, YouTube wait, right, until it started getting night, and then I could go out. And then when I was, really good and saucy and drunk, I was great again.
Yeah.
I was me again. I was lovely, Girls liked me and all this stuff. I was like, my friends thought I was funny. I'm like, I was like, back on, right?
Yeah.
Whenever I went on a date, I would wait for them to get there. And then I would drink 2 beers.
Pound the beers,
right?
yeah.
Because then I'm me again. I'm turned on again. And
you told me something about the amount of beer cans on the floor in your apartment at one point.
Yeah, in my apartment, which is interesting because I just went back to that apartment and I walked around there and I remember looking and the blinds were open.
Yeah.
And I was saying with who I was with, I was like, kind of like, I was like, man, like it looks so different. It looked like a home is what it fucking looked like, right? Mine was like a drug bin, right?
Yeah.
Like it was cans.
You said it was like almost
ball
like a
crawl.
ball, like a ball pit, but it was beer cans on the floor.
Because I'd lay on the floor and just crush it and throw it, and crush it and throw it, and crush it and throw it for weeks and weeks. And then like to the point where I would get embarrassed when I was taking them out that I would take out like 7 garbage bags full of cans.
Yeah.
That I would do it at like 3:00 in the morning.
Right.
So like people would
Didn't
go
want
like,
anybody
"What are you
to see
cleaning in there?" I'm like, "Go away."
His stuff.
Yeah. And so I had to move back with my parent or with my mom.
Yeah.
And I had to get sober, right? And so it's been 6.5 years. I'm very proud of those.
Yeah.
And again, cold turkey, one of those things. And I hated giving it up, right?
Yeah.
And anybody struggling with alcohol too, I understand you. I understand you so deeply because it's your best friend. It makes you feel great. It makes things better, and it doesn't kill you the way cocaine would. Right. It doesn't, like marijuana or something like that might do something like that, medicinal. And I totally agree. If you're doing it in medicinal, ways, like chill out, right? Like anxiety tactics, but please do that on such a small basis and do your exposure therapy. Right?
Yeah.
Do not keep hiding from the symptoms.
Yeah, don't cover it up.
Yes. If you need it to
doing
like
it.
get you out that door and get you going, if you need a little THC thing or something like that, yes. But make sure you're living also long enough in the uncomfortable part, right? Because that's how it ends, right? That's how it gets
through discomfort.
Yes.
It's a big thing.
And so that's what we were kind of coming up. And I would say we, because I was educated, intensely through all the therapy, and I was seeing a therapist for many years. I went through 11 therapists so far.
Well, and it's astonishing because the amount of knowledge you have on these subjects is that of somebody who's a psychologist.
Yeah.
And
It's pretty.
you always tell me, like, I know how I know what I need to do to recover, but I just can't do it.
Yeah, I was just saying this, to someone, it was like, it's like a brain surgeon working on themselves.
Yeah.
You just can't do it. You know it, but you can't do it.
Because you would tell me all these different things, and you're just like, I can't. And, for whatever reason, maybe the level of support you needed wasn't there, or you just couldn't generate enough, I don't want to say motivation, but you just couldn't bring yourself to go through the process alone or whatever it may be.
I needed someone with patience and grace, right? I needed someone. When you called me up and you said, Lace, and you were kind of like, so did you kind of think? I'm like, James, I just dropped $400 on an anxiety coach who was kind of known to be the best.
Yeah.
And he quit. He gave me my money back.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he said,
he told you
you're
couldn't help
you're too much.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had other therapists quit because you were too much, right? And I go, why would I think you could help me?
Right.
That seemed ludicrous.
Yeah.
And so here I am thinking, I can't have, but I still miss my friend, right? I still kind of want to talk to him, and whatever that turned into was cool, right? But so this pandemic was really, sadly a blessing in some small regards, and I know most people, some people can connect on that, of like, you called your friends maybe a little more, right? You missed them, right? You missed your family, right?
Well, and this is something I've told you in confidence, but I want everybody else to know, like, John thinks that I have just been the one helping him, but he helped me in many ways, struggling during the pandemic, because my livelihood, the majority of my social interactions were taken away for a period of time, and that was very difficult for me. I've been somebody, heavily involved in martial arts for going on 35 years. I've probably done 4 to 5 days of martial arts training consistently since I was 10 years old, and then to all of a sudden have that gone for a period of time, I started struggling with feelings of depression and anxiety and things, and through helping John, through my interactions with John, it helped me recognize a lot of those things in myself, you know, because of things I learned from you. It's like, oh, I'm going towards that dark place.
Yep.
Like I can see it. Oh, I'm recognizing that this is anxiety, or I'm getting depressed.
Yep.
And then in other ways as well, you've helped me greatly. So I don't want you to think that it's only been one-sided. Like,
Right.
I've always said we're a team in this.
It's definitely, you know, especially when you talk about anxiety or panic. I mean, just the way I present it, the way that you and I both kind of see it, because you've seen me go into a grocery store for 5 minutes and come out
Sweating.
almost sweating like I just ran 4 miles, right?
Yeah.
And go, what happened? I couldn't stand in the line.
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
Right? And I still have trouble with that, right?
Yeah.
But I don't give up on it, right?
Yeah.
And I still have trouble with a lot of things, right? But I just know that where I was and where I'm going, it's definitely in a good direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
And deciding to do this podcast, this is a huge step in the recovery, because our mantra for the past month or so has been no more hiding.
Yes.
And a big thing for you has been, when you interacted with these people from your past, it's kind of like
the good story.
You're only showing them the old stuff.
Yep.
You're not letting them in on any of this stuff.
And that really goes for a lot of people in some regards, and not to call anybody out, but how many times, like when you're on social media, like somebody, when you go on a vacation, you ever seen your buddy's photos? all the time,
Everybody's posting their
when he
their
has
wins.
the worst day all the time, when he's sick, it's like, do you get like the little photo like, hey, I'm sick, or do you get the thermometer in the mouth, right? The bag of ice on their head going, I'm sick, right? We need people, right? And so we want to show our good times, but we kind of want to show the worst times, right?
Yeah.
But when it's always the worst time, right? That's hard to show, right? There's never, I didn't celebrate a birthday, a Christmas, a 4th of July, never, in all those years. And I hated life.
Yeah.
And so when I say to people, especially you, that I'm happy to be here, I mean on the planet.
Yeah.
Right? And so, and I owe you a lot to that, of course. And it's like, but you know, it's not, but I can't push my other friends out of that. I pushed my friends away. Right? They just didn't know how to accept who I was, right, at this point. You know, if I was going to be, if I had friends who went to Seattle, they didn't invite me because they didn't want me there. They didn't invite me because they knew I couldn't handle that.
Yeah.
And so it was almost like teasing me. Hey, you want to come to Seattle? I'm like, you know my answer. I'm like, it's like, why'd you ask me that? I'm like, probably because I want you there. But so it was hard for them.
Oh, 100%.
And it was hard for you because we had to figure out how to do this exposure therapy thing.
Yes, and we're going to get into that. I definitely want to talk about the process that we've been following.
But first, you got to do a sponsor right now.
I wish I had sponsors.
Seaweed chips.
Yeah.
Trader Joe's cashews.
Kirkland
what do we
brand,
got?
Kirkland brand water.
All right.
Thank you, Costco.
Thank you, Costco.
What I wanted to talk about is that along with no more hiding, in the purpose of doing this was just in the hopes that we could help somebody else out there who may be struggling or may be experiencing similar things to what you've gone through, and to let them know there is hope. You have to find the right support system. You have to do the work, all of these types of things. So for us, the whole purpose of this is to be in service to others and to hopefully help some of you who are out there that are struggling, and to know that you're not alone.
Not even close.
All of us are fighting a battle, an unseen battle that nobody else can see.
And it's very similar.
Yeah.
I went online, and there are people online, like a guy named Charles Linden, a guy named Shah Kazan, where they tell you their story. It's identical.
Yeah.
It's identical.
And they'll tell you what you're thinking right now.
Absolutely.
Because they know what the mind of somebody.
Freaks you the fuck out. You're like, whoa, right? Like, how do you know that about me? It's like, I know that about me, and that's why I know it about you. Yeah. Right?
Because it falls into line with, it's like the MO for people who have derealization, who suffer from agoraphobia, have anxiety, like a lot of a lot of the inherent traits are the same for just about everybody who experiences that. And we're all fighting these internal battles to varying degrees. For some people it's more severe, some people at a lesser level, some people are fighting things that are in a completely different regard. But I think talking about this process that we started a couple of years ago, so essentially it started with me coming over, bringing some sandwiches.
Jersey Mike's.
We sat in your driveway. Oh, maybe we'll get a Jersey Mike's sponsorship now.
Jersey
Mike's.
I hope so.
And you were in Jersey, so you can say they're pretty good,
what's
right?
going on, OE? Fill up regular. All right.
So, starting in the driveway, I think from the driveway we moved to
the back
patio, and I think it was kind of cute. Your mom was pretty supportive in that. She got like a little fountain, a little tranquil fountain back there for us, and some music. I
still
playing.
hear that in my nightmares sometimes. It sounds like a Freddy Krueger movie. It's like,
She was going out of her way to help in ways she could.
You were the first friend that came over in 6 years, and so it was like.
So it was set up really nice back there, and I want to say we did that for at least a couple months.
Yeah. Well, also one of the things we didn't hit on, and real quick, is something called monophobia. Monophobia is the fear of being left alone, right?
Yes.
So here I was, I have to be in, But my family was tortured, and in some regards too, I still have it a little bit, where being left alone creates massive panic.
Yeah,
and
like
I
you,
had
you once got so freaked out, you ran across the street and kicked the door in of the neighbor's house, and thankfully they were nice people, and you didn't get shot.
It wasn't until a therapist said, "Did you ever wonder if like they had a gun or something like that?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah,
like
didn't you say the guy's wife ended up being a nurse or something?
Yep. There
so
was.
she
I went in there. I started kicking on the door and stuff like that, and they're like, "Oh, what do you want?" Like, I was like, I don't know, right? And it was like, and then I came back, and the ambulances came and stuff like, and that was just because I was left alone for 10 minutes.
Yeah, so monophobia.
And I didn't have a phone. Yeah. So monophobia is the fear of being left alone. It usually goes within, agoraphobia and stuff like that, the fear of, outdoors or anything like that.
Or large groups or, Or
So-
even like an open space can be a form of agoraphobia,
Oh my
or
God.
certain bright lights in an open space.
Yes.
Like all of these things can
I
be
never went
triggers.
inside a Costco, a Target, a
remember.
Walmart. No.
So those were big. Those weren't stops initially when we started, but we're getting ahead because
So
still backyard.
still backyard patio,
yeah.
sandwiches. Okay.
And then I want to say from there it was that we did have lunch together,
Where?
which you said you would never do, but your mom brought you.
Where I'm forgetting where it was. Was this the
Or
mall?
no, I think even before that it was. I would go and pick the sandwiches up and bring them to your house, and we did that for months.
Yep.
And then we went to the mall. I think it was the
Five-
Mongolian Grill. Oh no, we went
Five
to Five
Guys.
Guys
Yep.
next to the half
And
price books.
my mom had to be in the parking lot.
Had to be in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And you had to pick the perfect spot.
Near the window.
Had to be the perfect
Near the
place.
front door.
And you
Yep.
were very,
Yep.
again, telling me you didn't know if I was actually there. You didn't know
Mm-hmm.
if it was real. All of these different things.
Yep.
And then from there, I think we did a couple more times where she would bring you somewhere and we would meet.
Yep. And then I think, 3 months.
And this is months at a time, guys.
Yeah.
This is literally like months and months of doing this.
And it was I 3 or 4 months, where you said you got to get in my car and we'll go pick up the sandwiches
Yeah,
and
that's
bring
right.
it back.
Yep.
Then we did
We started
a month
doing
of
that.
that.
Yeah, we started
And then finally, like, us going out, no parent, no safe person, they call it. And again, the word safe person.
Yeah.
I thought I created that. I thought I'm a genius. It's called a safe person. Then you look into the literature of agoraphobics and stuff like that, and they'll assign safe people. I'm like,
Yeah.
No, I created that.
Yeah.
Like, nope, no, you didn't.
All
I'm like,
agoraphobics do that.
it's like a perfect example of like what agoraphobic, or high anxiety symptoms are. It's like, do you remember when you were in school and you learned the bubblegum song?
Right.
Bubblegum, in a dish.
Yeah.
Everybody remembers that, right? How did you learn it? It's like your friend. How did they learn it? It's like their friend. How did somebody on the East Coast in Florida learn it? It's
Right.
like they just know it. There was no internet,
Yeah.
it wasn't in a book. It wasn't in a movie, right? We just all sort of knew it, and we were doing it at the same time, but we
Yeah.
don't know how. You know it too.
Yeah.
So that's what it's like with anxiety and agoraphobic, symptoms, where you just all are acting the same way, but you've never met, right?
Yeah.
And so when we had,
No safe person. So you just had you and I. We would pick the sandwiches up and take them back to your house and
Yep.
go back on the back porch
Yep.
and talk and hang out. And then we got to that day where we actually.
I don't even know if it was Panera or something.
I think it was
like
Panera.
that.
Yeah.
But there
We
was
actually went to.
we actually went to it, right?
But we could only sit outside.
Yes. Yep. And then it was only outside for a while
Yeah.
until we had to
Until
sit.
the weather started getting bad. I'm like, come on, dude, we can
Yep.
we can
right?
go inside.
Freezing and raining. I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
fine.
you were fine, yeah.
Yeah.
And then by that point you were riding in the car alone with me, and we could go places together, which you said you would never do.
Never.
Because you remember you told me, because I have a little, kind of a little souped up Dodge Challenger.
You'd have to program it to where you wouldn't go fast. I remember that. Yeah.
I would put it like in the eco mode.
Right.
So because he's like, I'm never getting in that thing.
It's like if you had it like, it's like the eco mode is when bubbles start coming out.
Yeah.
It's like a Wonka car at that point. It just makes funny noises.
I remember
when it
you
drives.
telling me like it's too loud. Like I'm not.
Yeah, it's too loud.
You're
Yeah,
going.
I hear too much rumble.
You're going fast, and I'm like, dude, I'm doing like 15 miles an hour. Come on.
Yep.
And then what we really started to do was, in all of these things we're talking about is what's known as exposure therapy.
Yes.
So it's basically facing and working through the things that scare you the most. The things that he thought he could not do, we do those over and over and over until they become less of a big deal. And for us, or for you, going inside a grocery store by yourself was horrifying.
Very dizzy, the lights and everything like that. I couldn't figure out like where I was, I'd get disoriented and
you would call me. But prior to that, the thing was I would sit in front of the store out on the tables in the front or the chairs, whatever, and I would say, I want you to go to aisle 4.
Right.
And he'd be like, what?
Yeah. We would do
aisle 4, you're crazy. I'll be lucky if I even can walk in the door.
Yep.
And we did that hundreds of times.
Yeah, it's what we call aisle 27.
We just had our anniversary of aisle 27.
1 year ago. 1 year ago.
Yeah, last week Wednesday was the year anniversary.
1 year ago, I finally reached aisle 27, which is of this grocery store, and that was the hardest thing in the world for me to even think about getting, and because and so when you talk about like. I want you to get to aisle 4. It wasn't just get to aisle 4. It was walk down aisle 4. Go walk up aisle 4. I walk out. I'm like,
and you would call me. He would
still
call
terrified.
me. He would call me partway in, and he's like, I don't know where I am.
Yep.
I'm dizzy. I'm gonna pass out. I'm gonna fall over.
Yep.
And I'd be like, just breathe. Like try to work through it, dude. You
Sweating,
can do this.
shaky.
And there was times where I had to come in.
Yep.
Because you thought you were gonna black out or and you somewhat based in reality, because a lot of that fear existed because things like that had happened to you before, to where you literally climbed up on the conveyor belt of the check stand.
Yeah, you remember that? Yeah. This wasn't at the time
prior to us doing this.
With the 5 years before. Yeah, I went into a grocery store foolishly with my mom, and I turned around, she wasn't there, and I couldn't find her. And so I just started leaning up what I thought was like a bench or something like that. And I was like doing this, and this lady's just like pushing me, like works there. And she's like, are you okay? And I was just like, I just need to sit here. She's like, it's the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
Somebody was doing their groceries, right? And I was just like, sorry. And then I went to the self-checkout or the customer service, and I said, I need you to page somebody right away. I need to page you right away, page right away, right? And they're like, who is it? And they're like, my mom, and I won't say her name, but she goes, and so she says her name over the thing. I go, you need to be louder, right? I'm yelling at this person, like, because she can't hear you, like, and so I start shaking. I run out of the store, and then I see my mom, and then it worked out.
Yeah.
But just shit like that.
Yeah. And there was other occasions of this that you told me had happened previously that, had helped inform a lot of these fears that have held you back, because you remember those things that have happened and you so vividly. Severely don't want them to happen again. That's what's been holding you back all this time is like, that might happen, therefore I want to avoid that thing.
Yep.
You had told me about another occasion where you had essentially didn't you go lay down like where you thought cars might hit you?
The Target parking lot.
Yeah, but so somebody would stop, or because you needed help. You were freaking out.
I was outside of the Target parking lot. My brother went in to buy Guardians of the Galaxy 2 on Blu-ray, which I wanted, but I couldn't go in the store. He wasn't answering his phone. I was in there. It was hot. And so I started shaking to the point where I needed to get attention. I needed people to help me. And the only way I thought you get help in a parking lot is by like being a traffic nonsense. So I laid in the middle of the thing, and I kept trying to like
touch the vehicles.
put my hand out of the wheels, and I could just feel them doing like that. And I go, no, you have.
And people are literally just driving by, right?
All I'm thinking is, no, dum-dum, run over my hand.
Yeah.
So you'll have to stop and help me,
Yeah.
right? There was this Hispanic family, right? I'm stupid and thinking they don't know how to speak English or anything. So I say, policia, and they're looking at me like they might speak English, but it's just like, I was so out of my mind, right, that I needed help.
Yeah.
Because I was in there maybe 10 minutes. Right.
And we say out of your mind, like, you mentioned it, you touched on it briefly earlier. You were institutionalized at a point.
Yeah, I it was self-admitted, right? And that was a wild.
And just to point this out, you told me about a year ago or so that was the only option. Like, even though we got over that initial hurdle, we got past 2020, and you did not, thank goodness,
right?
You did not take your life like you had planned to,
right?
Through what little work we were able to do, but then you were telling me, like, I gotta get out of here, and the only way I'm gonna do that is I'll have to get institutionalized again.
Yeah.
And that's the only option I can see. Like, only possible thing.
I called them all too.
Yeah.
And since I had, because I was on disability at the time, I still am, but it's they said, they said, oh, you've got great insurance because you're through the government. It's like that. We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
They make it sound like it's a fucking, 4-star restaurant or hotel.
And just real quick, kind of explain to the audience what it's like to be institutionalized, like to be self-admitted. What is it like in there? I mean, there's movies that have portrayed.
Yeah,
you said some have pretty accurately.
Gosh, there's a movie called Girl Interrupted. Even though that's a period piece in the 60s, 70s, a lady named Susanna Kaysen wrote this book about, what was her journey like there. James Taylor, the famous, musician, had talked about, institutionalized.
Yeah.
It is basically, it's not a big hospital. It's more of like a campground looking thing. And it's long hallways, right? And everybody has their room. I sadly, and there's a picture of this too, was room 253, which was my area code, right? And it's 1-inch mattresses on wooden frames with dirty pillows, and you don't get an inch of freedom, right? The bathroom doors don't exist because you can hang yourself in them.
Yeah.
There's no shower curtain, right?
Anything that you could potentially hurt yourself with.
Yeah. And that every hour you got door checks or room checks. And so it's click, click, spin the knob, check.
And you're usually in there with another sharing.
Usually
sharing
you are.
with
I was
person.
very lucky that that there was enough space that I got my own room, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I remember sort of, there were nurses that, were good, and there was nurses that were not good, right? And I would go into like the TV room, and I remember hearing a football game being put on, and I didn't look up. I was just sort of sitting and staring out the window, and there was this guy just hitting the same note on a piano.
Yeah.
Over, ing,
yeah.
ing, and everybody doesn't, right? And then everybody's watching this. There's about 4 or 5 people watching this football game. It's college football. And I'm like, I finally look up at the screen to see what the score is, right? And the screen is almost entirely black, right? Somebody had thrown a chair at the screen to where, I'm trying to think of like what, okay, when you punch a plasma or something like that, where it like cracks and it almost looks like just a black, and then you could see like the triangles on the top and the bottom, and there's little bits of it. You can't even see that. There's a huge black stripe right down the diagonal of it, and you can see the football game in the top right corner and the bottom left corner about 3 inches.
Wow.
You can't even tell what's on the screen.
Yeah.
They are staring at it, right?
As if it's like the
greatest
best picture
thing
ever, yeah.
And then there's a girl that kept asking me for cigarettes, and I said, no, I don't smoke. She'd come back 2 seconds later, right?
Yeah.
And eventually something happened where they basically, they would go meds, and then all of them would come out of the room, they'd line up behind
Yeah.
a blue line, and they'd all start swallowing their pills. And I didn't get any pills.
Yeah.
Right? I wasn't on any pills. So I was actually one of the most craziest people in there, right? Because my emotions
Yeah.
were coming out, right?
Yeah.
My panic was coming out. I was spinning on the floor, telling people I need to spin. And these people who were very institutionalized would stare at me
Yeah.
like, what's his problem?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's how bad it was.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think I'm better than anybody in that place and situations. Like, I just hope that those people have some peace.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Because, and especially in the big, but there are many people suffering in
Yeah.
that place. And they stare out the window. They're probably still there today, right?
Yeah.
Staring at, and that's their life,
Yeah.
right? And I had perspective at that point of maybe I'm not this bad.
Well, and I remember you telling me a story about going. Somehow you were allowed to go outside at some point, and you heard music, and you thought it was.
Oh yes.
You thought you were imagining it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If Steven Tyler hears the story, there was it's called an open door facility. There's places. There's one in Fife called RRC, I think it's called, where it's a locked door facility. There's I'm trying to be sensitive about this, but there's good crazy and bad crazy,
Right.
I was good crazy, right? Because I was suicidal and things like that. And then there's bad crazy, where the guy who throws garbage cans in the middle of the thing
Yeah.
and starts like lighting himself on fire, that's the bad crazy.
More of a danger to others
Danger to
as opposed to
society.
just himself.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And so they so I was in an open door facility, so people can go out into the parking lot and go smoke. But this is in Puyallup, right? And so it's like it's kind of in the middle of the woods, but it's near the Puyallup Fair,
Right.
and so it's so the Puyallup Fair is going on. So I'm out there. It's like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm just sort of like staring into the woods, and I hear this, "Dream with me, dream
Yeah.
for years." I was like, "Dream on, dream on." I was like, "What is this happening?"
Yeah.
And there's peacocks that are infested in that area, so they start walking and looking at me. I'm like, "Oh no, here it comes again!"
Yeah,
right?
you thought you were.
And I was just like, "How?" And then I remember a nurse coming out, and I was like, "Do you hear that?" And she's like, "The concert?" I was like,
yeah.
like
You can hear
startled,
it
like,
too,
"You hear
yeah.
it?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, so Steven Tyler was playing a thing, and he's playing this famous song, the
Yeah.
Aerosmith song, "Dream On."
Yeah.
And I said, "Dude, if only that guy knew who he was singing to right now."
Yeah.
Right? He has no clue, right? Because here I am. I'm that kid that's dreaming on, that's trying to like make it happen,
Yeah.
and I'm fucked.
Yeah.
Right? I'm here. I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And that was like I cried that
Oh
one.
yeah, I bet.
That was fucking terrible.
Yeah.
So that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And so another thing is you've chosen in this recovery, in a large part, I think, due to the alcoholism and everything, and obviously tried every medication in the world to help, many of them.
Mm-hmm.
You made a choice that you needed to do this without taking medication and try to do your recovery as much as you can without taking any. And that's
It's a
not
painful way.
And that's not for everybody, and obviously may not work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But why was that important to you? Was it because you knew about that you had an addictive personality, or did you think that you didn't want to mask what was going on? You wanted to try to get through it and sort it out on your own, or
quitting, because I quit smoking, I quit drinking, I quit coffee. I was for all this year of celibate. I didn't talk to women, didn't touch women, anything like that for many years. Yeah, 5.5 years. And so I knew that if you went without it, right, if you could feel the rawness of it, right, and it's almost like being burned and letting it sizzle, right, compared to just keep putting aloe on to make it feel better, right. There was no healing, right? I had to live through the pain.
You had to have a little more of a raw experience for it to resonate.
It was masochistic too, because I just like the one time a fence sort of fell on my leg, right? And I didn't break it, but it was like scraped up and bleeding. And I just remember going, oh, whoa.
Because
like,
you actually felt something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a bowl of soup that kind of went up my arm, right? And it burned my wrist, right? Permanently.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
Right? I loved it.
Because you felt alive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I loved it, right? And so
because you've made this analogy a couple of times about the couple of times that you died or the old John died.
Yeah.
The 30th birthday was one of them, and
Right.
then you had another one.
Yep.
So that's interesting. Like for you in this process, you felt that you've needed to fully immerse yourself in that uncomfortability to be able to feel and to get the most out of this process that we've been going through.
And I didn't even know where the process was taking me. So
and I kind of have a feeling like anything else, it's very individualized, and like it's got to be very hard because I think each person is going to have to find the way or the path that resonates with them.
Yes.
Like many other things. For you, this is the path that we've chosen. This is what we've been doing. And we've been working now for about 2 years.
About 2 years.
On our recovery.
Yep.
And
I appreciate when you say our recovery, because this is something that affects your personal life, right? And not in a negative way.
No.
But it's, your wife Amy's been very supportive. Your mother and father's been very supportive. And they knew, right?
Yeah.
Like, I started dating a girl, back in August.
Yeah.
That was
something
huge.
You told me you'd never be able to do.
Never, right?
Yeah, you told me you would never even be able to talk to a girl on the phone.
Nope. And I connected with this wonderful girl, and and I was over at her house, and I'm seeing her kids, and I just remember one Halloween, this is this year, I'm sitting on a couch, and I've got this amazing girl on my arm, and her wonderful kids, and we're watching a movie in her house. I'm like,
who am I?
Where am I?
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Yeah.
And it was because of you and your confidence in me. Like, you saw it the whole time, right?
Well, and you put in the work.
Yeah, I did.
Because you can't help somebody that doesn't want to be helped and doesn't want to do the work.
Yep.
And the things that you have done have been incredibly challenging, and in many instances, things you told me were impossible for you to do.
Absolutely.
But I think the key is consistency, and we've always talked about celebrating the little wins. Mm-hmm. And that's been something very hard for you to do, because it's hard for you to recognize in the moment when you've had a success.
Yeah.
That's been one of your biggest struggles, is like not feeling celebratory over something that's a huge deal. And I'll have to point it out, like, John, do you think 3 months ago you could have done this? Oh, no, I never could have done this.
No.
Well, you just did it. Why aren't you,
And that goes back to my Hollywood days, I think, because it wasn't big enough.
Right.
It didn't give me the Oscar. It didn't win me the Grammy, right? It was small, and I think large-mindedly.
Yeah.
I want the amazing feeling, angel wings coming out, flying through the air moment feeling.
But in a lot of our studies and listening to what experts have to say, a lot of them say when you fully recover, it's not going to feel like a big deal. It's going to feel like it's always been this. It's like, it's
a little disappointing. Yeah.
Like when you were driving the other day, you told me how alive you felt, and you're like, oh, this isn't so bad. Like,
right.
What we've been practicing recently is John driving on his own, and he'll safely record a video of himself practicing on the side streets, side streets around his house.
Right.
But, and then he'll
not on the freeway.
No. Side streets.
Yeah.
Very not heavily trafficked areas and all of that.
And a quick note, it wasn't like I was a bad driver. I drove from LA to Seattle
numerous
times.
Yeah.
I was never bad. I was driving since I was 16, and now when I'm 35, I can't get in a car. No. Yeah.
So that's our recent thing that we're really working on, is getting him to be able to drive again.
Yep.
And it started with me following him and being on the phone with him.
Yep.
and then has now progressed in honestly a matter of weeks to
It's a little quick.
all of a sudden I'll get a video, hey, I drove here.
Yeah.
Like look at this.
Well, I was
like,
just telling you, like I met Shelby down at the post office.
Yeah.
And I go, man, it was such a great reward, right? To just push myself and know I could do it, right?
Yeah.
And have confidence in myself that I was like, God damn it, like I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. Still scary as shit, right? But still able to, like, I can't believe I do it. I remember driving past because I was always just getting to the neighborhoods, right? And then when I drove by that gas station, I remember looking back at it and going, what the hell am I doing, right? But I just had to do it, man.
So hundreds of times, me sitting in front of the grocery store, you going in. I remember there was a whole phase of where you couldn't do a complete shopping trip.
Yep.
You would go in, get 2 items, buy them, come out, and then put them on the table next to me.
It looked real weird.
And I looked like a thief or something.
Yeah, because I couldn't even bag it. I was too afraid to bag it because that would take time.
Always self-checkout.
Always
We're
self-checkout.
still working on that.
Yep.
Because that's
there was
still
a sweet old lady at the Fred Meyer the last time I went.
Yeah.
And I was just like, maybe her. But then, like, the bagger looked slow.
Right.
So I was like,
And that's another thing. That's another trigger for him is having to get through that scenario quickly.
Yes.
Which is why you do the self-checkout, why you have your card ready.
Memorized
no
all
bag.
the moves, no bag. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is, we've said all these great things and we've showed a great contrast in where you were, how far you've come. But I think it's important for people to understand this is very much still a work in progress.
100%.
And I think it would be valuable to, for you in your own words, to kind of discuss for other people who are struggling and feeling hopeless and wanting to do something to work towards their recovery. What do you think their focus should be? Is it that one little thing just consistently to the point where it becomes not a big deal? Like, obviously finding a support system and having that in place, I think, is an integral part. Some people are going to be able to find that with their family. Some people may find it outside their family, whatever it may be. Could be inspiration via YouTube video.
Yeah.
What's that first step, do you think?
The very, very first step is consulting with your doctor, right? Knowing that this is anxiety and agoraphobia. You know, like sometimes there is vertigo, sometimes there is brain stimulations or anything like that can create dizziness and fogginess, migraines. Get it all ruled out, right? That's the very, very first thing.
And ask your doctor about, now you know what derealization is. If you are experiencing anything similar to what John was talking about with feeling like you're in a dreamlike state, and the blurriness around the edges, not knowing, if feeling detached from reality, this type of thing. A lot of people don't know about derealization, depersonalization. So that's something that maybe through this, if one person out there who's experiencing that hasn't, because you had told me before there was a generalization that was made of how long it usually is before somebody is actually diagnosed with that.
Years.
There's an average timeline, and it usually takes like 3 or 4 years before they find the right doctor that gives them that diagnosis.
Yeah, there's But yeah, especially for me, I had a great confidence in my physicians, and I had saw a guy named Thompson in Seattle who was like world renowned and everything like that, and he was good at like figuring it out as far as like your anxieties, things like that.
Right.
But as far as the symptomatic things like that with the derealization or depersonalization, sometimes you'll see it in literature labeled as DPDR. It's not well known, right? And even my doctor had great confidence in. I said, "Do you know about derealization?" He's like, "What's it called?"
Yeah.
Right? And he said something that kind of shook him and shook me. He goes, "John," he goes, "I love when you come in." And by the way, throughout that 5 years, I did leave the house maybe once a week to see my doctor.
Yeah.
I was never unwell and well,
Yeah.
right? He kept just doing it.
And we haven't talked out at all about countless ER visits.
Mhm.
Because
Countless.
always thinking something was wrong,
Yeah.
you were dying.
At least a couple times
And-
a month minimum. Yeah.
And then also, would you say hundreds of hours spent on suicide hotlines?
I wish that was the case.
Or less?
I called every suicide hotline, every outreach program they have. These people are good-hearted but bad managed, right? I always
And
say
you were saying you've actually been hung up on
numerous
several
times.
Yeah,
Times.
that's scary.
Because they can't keep talking to you.
Well, and a lot of it is volunteer based, and
So
they're just people too.
Good-hearted, bad managed, right?
Yeah.
And so and then if you they love to put you on hold when you say you're suicidal. That's crazy, right? It's like they love to like tell you to slow down so that you spell your first name correctly, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, tell me, and it takes. I've timed it once. I once called the suicide hotline, or it was Washington State or something like that, and it took them 17 minutes to answer the phone to where I was talking to somebody.
Yeah.
Everything else was
Automated,
crap, and it was like. And so I asked my therapist, when you call your therapist, anybody who's in therapy probably knows this, and you get a voicemail of your therapist, they give you their information, and they said, if you're in crisis, call blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I've asked my therapist, have you actually called that number? It's like, why would I need to call? It's like, I think you need to call it and pretend you're like one of your patients.
See the process,
and see your process, because you're promoting that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's not good, right? And a lot of them actually took that note.
Yeah.
They thought that was an excellent note. And I'm like, here I am, right?
Exactly.
So when I did the ER visits, especially, I have a bag full of all the bracelets of the times I wanted to kill myself, right?
Yeah.
And it was like,
So a lot of times you would, when you were feeling suicidal, you would admit yourself to the ER as well.
Yep, and they do a protocol called it's
a wellness check type of thing.
It's kind of thing. I went to St. What's the one in Tacoma? The tall building, St.
Joseph?
Good Sam's,
Good Sam, yeah.
something like that.
I think so.
I went there 2 days before Christmas, like 3 years ago, and I waited in the lobby for hours, and then I got in, and because I said I was suicidal, they couldn't let me leave until the psychiatrist, person came in and sort of evaluated me that if I should go upstairs or if I should leave, right?
Yeah.
And so I almost got to the point where, like, this is pointless. I'm just going to leave. Like, you can't now, right? And so they put you in the room where everybody else is feeling like that, and then they're handcuffed to beds and screaming and stuff like that, and you can't move.
Right.
You can't go. If you go into like St. Anthony's in Gig Harbor, I did that a few times. They put you in a room. Sorry,
You're all right.
They put you in a room and they make you strip. Right.
Yeah.
They put your belongings in a bag, Ziploc bag. They have a security guard, right, or a head nurse or some nurse station in front of the room, just staring at you, right, until you're evaluated, right, and they give you the fun little socks and the robe.
Assless gown.
Yeah, I think some nurses like that, but it was definitely like it became so normal that I was just like, hey, how you guys doing today? Yeah. Still back at like, yep, hate life. How about you guys? Like that.
Regular occurrence.
Yep. I'd see the same nurses, same security guards.
Yeah.
Back again, huh? Yep.
So for people out there struggling, like consulting the physicians, trying treatments, trying to see what works. But as far as when it comes to the support system, putting in the work, all of these kinds of things, it sounds like easy in theory, but in practical application, what have been some things that have driven you to go the extra mile in putting yourself in these uncomfortable spots? And is it just the continual want to find normalcy,
a little bit,
to live again?
Yeah, there, especially for people struggling. I always say, figure it out, rule things out. and get a good support beam going, like every tent should.
Right.
Stabilize yourself, right? Create your wellness plan or things that you think might be impossible, right?
Right.
And then separate those. They call it the 10 steps. Separate those into like if I say we did a little of this. If I say going into the grocery store is like
Worst thing in the world. Yeah.
You don't understand. I can't. I understand. I do understand.
Yeah.
I do understand, right? And so I'm going to tell you when you walk into a grocery store, and I'm not pointing at you, just normal of someone of independence. It's get out of the car, lock the car, go in, grab the basket, get the salad, come out, pay for the bill.
Right.
But for high anxiety people, it's get out of the car, look around. Who's here? Am I too close? How long is this? Is it raining? Right?
Yeah.
It's just a million things
Is somebody
inside
going
those
to
little
talk
moments.
to me? Is
Yep.
somebody going to think I'm suspicious?
Yes.
I know that was a big thing for you, especially when you had the beard.
Mm-hmm. And I looked horrible. And
you're like, everybody's looking at me. I look like a homeless person, or I look like a crazy person.
There's video of me where I'm just twitching the whole time. Yeah. And
a lot of people, like one of the big things I knew when that John was making steps in his recovery is his eyes changed. When he's having bad derealization, depersonalization, he feels like, and he almost looks like he's on weed.
Yeah.
Or like stoned. His eyes look heavy, like kind of like foggy, like not clear. And so like I'll be able to tell, like, oh, he's getting into twitches and things like that.
Right.
Like,
I'll mumble a little. Yeah.
Or think you can't talk. Like,
Right.
oh, I can't put a sentence together.
Yeah, that was always
Those are little telltale things that the anxiety is heightening. And
right. Like if I wanted to say, I need to go to the store and get salad, I was so afraid to complete the sentence of it. So I would be like, we go store salad, please.
yeah.
And I would cut myself off because it's the most minimal amount of effort to get to the end, so I can escape.
Again, getting it over with.
Getting it over
like
with.
doing it quick.
Yep. And you learn from
Little
that,
shortcuts.
but it's not the good stuff. So when we were going to the grocery store and getting back to like what these 10 steps were like,
Yeah.
get yourself to the point where like you're gonna buy one thing, and this is what we did, right? Buy one thing. And it's like, what aisle is that on, right? Where are you going to get it? How many steps do you think it would take to like, and then cut that into 10 different things. Open the door.
Yeah.
Or walk in the door.
Yeah.
Walk out.
Yeah.
Walk in the door.
Who cares
walk out.
Who cares
walk
what
in the
anybody
door.
thinks?
Yeah.
Who cares what it looks like? That's what I would tell you. I'm like, if they come out and if they say something to you, tell them to talk to me.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Like, and I think, there's that great clip of the boxing coach telling the guy to stay in the flame.
Right.
Like we live in the fire. We live in the fire.
Right.
And what do we do with the fire? We control it. We extinguish the fire. Like I think
Teddy Atlas.
Not running, not hiding. This is a big part of this because John and I had made a lot of progress. And then there was a point, it wasn't that long ago, it was maybe like 5 months ago, we were in a different restaurant that we hadn't been in. And we were having
the breakfast?
Yeah, and we were having lunch.
Yeah.
And we got seated in this area
Yep.
that made you uncomfortable.
Yep.
And you said, you think we could go to that, have them reseat us in that other room?
Right. It was more open. There was more lighting, and it was near the door. Yeah.
And I go, is this making you uncomfortable? And you're like, yeah, I need to need to be able to. I said, then we need to stay here.
Right. And the waitress was pissed because I
you had asked to move, and she was starting to do
the orders, and where do you want to sit? Like over there, and then I said, never mind.
Yeah.
And she's like,
yeah.
Okay. And again, I'm the bad one. Don't. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But what happened after you forced yourself to stay there?
I forced myself to stay there. And then I think I started a timer.
Yeah.
Right. And I said, I'll show you right? I'll show you, James, right?
Yeah.
That's how, he goes, I'll show you how uncomfortable it gets, right? And I'll show you that I ain't going to be here for 15 minutes before I hit the floor. And so I start watching some videos. I've got this timer going on.
Working on your breathing and some of the things that we do.
Right. And we just started, going through it, and I'm a little out of it. And then because I remember I ordered chicken fried steak or something like that. By the time I got to the toast, I'm just talking. Right?
And then I told you something. I said, your eyes changed.
Yep.
I said, you're back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I could tell.
Yeah, you basically said it like that.
You got to the other side. You're back. You're here again. Mm-hmm. Like I could tell.
And other people have mentioned that as far as like, there's this 20 minutes in the beginning where you're just like, you're not there.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know why you're not there. Right. But you walk in, you're somehow and then when you get comfortable, it's just like, oh, whoa.
But the fight or flight instinct kicks in at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had regressions and things where you've had to escape during that.
Sure.
And we don't look at that as a setback. We say, hey, we were in it for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like, let's try to do more next time. This isn't a failure.
Yeah.
We're going to learn from this experience, and we're going to try to do a little more next time. Like, we always have that mantra of celebrating the little victories.
Yeah. And God bless you, because we were doing this once a week.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you realize, like, oh, like, we got to, like, you're seeing so much good results out of the 1 week.
Yeah.
And you're like, we'll do this twice a week, right? And so it became our Tuesdays and Saturdays.
Yeah, Tuesdays and Saturdays, and we added in getting the physical health in order.
Mm-hmm. Going to the gym.
Yeah, we go to look at that.
This out. Yeah,
we go to the gym twice a week usually. He's lost.
I was 275 and 235 around that now. Yeah.
Lost a good amount of weight.
Yep.
I think we need to have a talk about the beard, because I had told you that was something that was holding you back.
It was identifying.
And it was identifying you as this version of yourself that you hate. Mm-hmm. And you had told me, no, I'm keeping this until I'm better.
Yes.
And that's good, because this is the measuring of time that I've been unwell.
Yes.
And I'm going to remove this once I'm recovered.
Yes.
And I told you on many occasions, I think that's part of what's holding you back. It's not a positive thing, because every time you look at that, you're being reminded of all these bad things.
Yeah, I hated myself.
Right?
And I wanted to look the way I hated myself.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, and I don't know if it's a very personal thing, so we may or may not share some of the footage. We did record this special moment, but I remember I showed up at John's house, and he was like, "Hey, come inside for a minute."
Yeah, I sort of just sparted on
and
him.
I'm like, okay, and he had some clippers and scissors and stuff, and you're like, let's go out back to the back patio.
Yeah, because I remember I had just the rubber bands that would go down it, and these rubber bands were so cheap and like crap that they had melted into the beard.
And a lot of the hair on his beard had actually was detached from his face.
Yeah.
But everything was being held together in this strange dreadlock type of
it was
way
all
it had
this,
formed.
This sort
all
of
tangled.
This jungle vine of just grossness.
And so we sat down back there, and you were very shaky and very emotional, and you said, it's time. I'm gonna cut it off.
Yeah.
And one, it was
5 years of that. Yeah.
It was very special for me that you had come to that decision on your own, despite me encouraging it. I had let it go. I had encouraged it a couple of times.
And it was sweet. Yeah, I remember the first time Amy, because again, I couldn't see your wife or anything like that, and I had known
outside
her
of me and your family, you couldn't see anybody else for.
And the first time I saw Amy, I think she might have brought me a birthday gift.
Yeah,
it was beard oil.
Yeah, she's like, if you're gonna have a beard like that, you need to take care of it.
Right,
like, here's a comb, here's oil.
And so it was the first time I was realized, like, oh, people like see this too, right? And they just care, right?
Yeah.
And so I knew what it looked like and felt like. And so when we were in that back porch again, kind of where it all started.
Yeah.
I remember just taking those scissors.
Yeah.
And going like, it's time.
Yeah. And you got those scissors, and you got them about up to here, and you started shaking.
Yeah.
And you told me, you said, I'm worried I'm going to cut my throat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that you were going to miss when you were, but like you were afraid you were going to harm yourself almost. Mm-hmm. Like you were afraid you were going to, like you said, I feel like I'm going to like cut my
it
throat.
Felt like cutting my own head off.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it in that video where, and again, I took this video for no one, right? I just wanted to see this, right? And I knew that this moment, right, is going to need to be somehow documented, right? Based on like, because I had been journaling too, and we mentioned this a bit. I've been journaling throughout this entire experience and in hopes of writing a book about it, because a therapist many years ago said, do you think you have a super talent, right? And I was like, I'm a pretty good writer. And she goes, yeah, that's not going to work. I'm like, I go, what for? And she's like, I was going to say, maybe you could use this talent to like help you get out of your anxiety.
Right.
And I said, what do you mean? Like write a story about what I'm going through? And she's like,
yeah.
And I go, you mean like write a journal about someone who's agoraphobic and high anxiety and what it's like to live as that person, right? Huh.
Yeah.
And so I had been journaling, and I still have, thousands of pages of journal, right? Of everything that I've been going through, and I still journal, right?
Yeah.
And so when I started doing these videos, it was on the same sort of aspect where I was like, I want to see this somehow.
Yeah.
And so when I had those scissors up, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
And I remember saying like, is it okay? And you're like, it's okay.
Yeah, you're good.
And I remember hearing that.
Yeah.
Right, about across.
And then you were like, wow.
Yeah, yeah. And I put it down. I said, that's disturbing looking.
Yeah.
And I said, it feels like I just cut my own arm off or something like that.
And then you legit had phantom beard syndrome for a long time. Because you were so used to moving it out of the way when you would eat. And
zippers and soup were my enemies.
Yeah.
Foods of play. I just was always like, yeah. And what's crazy is I don't miss it at all, but I can't do clean shaven. I'm a little
Gotta
too
have a little something.
I'm a little too something. So, but definitely when it starts getting scruffy a little bit, I could feel it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't even know how, and dear God, I got to that beard, right? Because it was. You just have to rot.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and there was a funny irony in it in that you really didn't want to bring attention to yourself, yet you had that, and every time we would go out in public somewhere, somebody would comment about your beard.
Oh, I hated that.
Hey, dude, how long did it take
beard.
you? Or how long did it take you to grow that?
Yes.
Like, I can't tell you guys how many times, and I'm like, dude, you don't want attention from people, but you have this thing that, like, some guys are in envy of, like, bro, how long did it take you to grow that beard? And you're like you, a lot of times you didn't even know what they were talking about. You're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, because you didn't think of it that way.
No, not at all. And I didn't see myself to the point where, like, they would see this and they go, dude, like, what's up with this? And they would ask me, how long did that take? And I would go, like, how long did what take? And he goes, your beard. I'm like, I don't know, right? Like, I don't know how to answer that. And it seems like a easy question, right? Like, so I would just say a couple years, and they go, what?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know, right? And still today, like, one thing about an agoraphobic, and most people would know this, I still have a trouble with knowing what day it is.
Yeah.
I don't know time passing, right? Months, right? Holidays and things like that. Like, if someone knocked on the door and it was a kid and he's dressed up, I'd be like,
Is it
what
Halloween?
what the hell is
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah.
And go, it's Halloween. I'm like, that's in October. And it's like,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
October, dude.
like,
yeah.
whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I have noticed that improving with you though.
Mm.
Yeah, you don't re-ask me the same thing over and over as often.
Mm-hmm.
You used to constantly ask me, what day is it?
Yep.
What day is it?
Yep.
And or what time is it?
What time is it?
That's lessened a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We've made a lot of progress,
Yep.
but there's still a ways to go. And I think it's going
Yeah.
to be something like anything else in life. You're always trying to perfect your craft. You're always trying to perfect yourself.
Well,
Like,
we were just talking about driving, you know,
Yeah.
like how many weeks it's been, right?
Yeah.
Not how many years or months, right?
Yeah.
And so consistently doing stuff that kind of scares us. And driving was always the beast,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh no, I can't do that.
but
'cause it's
driving is also
the key.
a huge integral key component to finding that freedom and living.
Yep.
Having the ability to leave if you want to. Go somewhere,
Yep.
meet somebody, meet
Yep.
somebody somewhere, whatever
Yep.
it may
Yep.
be, not
Yep.
feel trapped,
Yep.
not feel that if you start feeling that loneliness and isolation, being able to get out of that space for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think in closing, like kind of summarizing the continual nature of the process and the journey and where you hope to be at the end of this year and where you hope
What day is it? What month is
and the
this?
progression and how you hope to help others through this podcast today.
I hope it just, like, I mean, just in the first part of the question of like, where do I hope to see myself? I really dream about the simplicities of life.
Yeah.
I want to see the beach,
Yeah.
right? I want to taste like a food in a different state.
Yeah.
I want to get on a plane, right? I traveled all the time. Yeah.
There are plans being made.
Right. Try and do things like that.
Yeah.
I agreed to take a longer trip with you to this arm wrestling thing.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like,
yeah. Because I'm an arm wrestler now, apparently.
right. You're gonna find out.
I went from one sport that's hard on my joints to another sport
Yeah.
that's physical and
Totally
hard on my
smart,
joints.
James. Yeah. Next is extreme sword fighting,
Yeah, there you go.
pogo riding, and we're like, I'm just into this now.
Yeah, so we're going to be going down to Bend, Oregon in June for that.
Right. Right.
You're kind of my media guy, might help me with some of my video stuff. I think
Sure.
we're going to be doing some things in that regard because
Yeah.
you have so much experience in that.
Yeah. And that makes me creatively buzzed,
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that. Yeah.
In regard to helping others through this.
Yeah, it's so difficult because everybody's got their own level of where they are right now, right? There are people who are just so effing tired of going to the same job
Yeah.
that it creates anxiety. There are people who have children, right? Who they feel like, maybe they're not paying enough attention to them. Maybe they're struggling in school or anything like that. And that creates their anxiety.
Yeah.
There are people who are in bad marriages. I don't know what to do. That creates anxiety. There is, weight loss and like, I'm too heavy. I'm too thin. Self-image, right? All I could say is the internet is your friend.
Yeah, there are
Social
tools.
media is not.
Yeah.
Right? The internet is your friend. Social media is not. Try to find YouTube channels, right, that support anything, especially with anxiety or anything like that. And the ones that were the most effective for me, the ones that looked into the camera and talked to you.
Yeah.
Not interviews of them being interviewed,
Right.
right?
Because again, that's very curated and can be disingenuous and
Yes,
not.
and it didn't feel personal.
Yeah.
And so I started there, and so even if somebody's just stumbled across your podcast, right?
Yeah.
And like, because it might say keywords of anxiety or
Yeah.
agoraphobic, right? And they're just going to hear my story, right? but they're also going to hear part of your story, right? And they're going to get a more perspective of what the people around us live like, right? And that it's okay for us to really, be unokay.
Yeah.
You know?
I'll put some resources in the show notes as well if there's any channels that you've found on YouTube that are helpful, as well as books or people, that you've found inspirational or helpful in your journey.
Right. And you know what you were just talking about, the no hiding. Please don't be ashamed of this.
Yeah, don't be ashamed, and know that you're not alone in this.
Not even close.
This is not something you're alone in. More people than will ever admit to you are struggling with some form of this in one way or another.
Yep.
It's just to varying degrees.
Yep.
Some more extreme than others, some lesser than others.
There was so many times with you, my friend Paul, where I just I opened about my sobriety, and sometimes it's a struggle. I just got phone calls, and it was just like, where have you been? And their like reaction is like, no, where have you been?
Yeah.
Right. I've been here. I was always willing to help you, right? But I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And so when you let people know, right?
Well, and authenticity, being genuine, being open, and being honest. Mm-hmm. That was a big thing we talked about that kind of led to this being back in the dating scene a little bit and meeting somebody was you have to be genuine about your struggle. You have to be open and honest. You can't hide. Mm-hmm. Like this person deserves the benefit of the doubt of knowing the real you, who you are right now, and choosing if that's something that they're comfortable with supporting and moving forward with.
Right.
Is not fair to that potential.
And you'll find that the things that you hate about yourself are not the things they're not going to like about you.
And you'll find that people in general are way more supportive and understanding than you may ever have imagined.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I told you you'd be dating a nice girl, like even a year ago, or you would be like, what? Like, that's ridiculous. I can't even talk to a girl on the phone. No. How's that ever going to happen? No. Like, but you were open and honest, and you found that it's respected and appreciated, and it's something that sadly isn't common, even with people who don't have issues that they're dealing with.
Sure.
Just honesty in general can be hard in being genuine for people. So that's something that people greatly respect and will be more supportive than you ever realize.
And meeting new friends or anything like that. Yeah.
You're not alone, and you also have to realize that you're enough. Like I told you that the other day.
Yeah.
Like, you are enough.
Yeah.
You don't think you have to be something
perfect.
Like you have to be good enough for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be this perfect image for everybody else. Like you have to be enough for yourself.
Yep.
Like work on yourself, and everything else will fall into place.
Yeah. And that's a process sometimes.
Yeah, it's a process. And again, like this is some of where your struggle came from, was maintaining that certain image of yourself as the Hollywood guy, as the film guy, the writer, the success, and all of this. Those are, stumbling blocks that we can fall into when we identify with things versus who we actually are. And if we're happy with ourselves, we often, when those things get taken away, don't like what we're left with.
Sure.
And we see this a lot in martial arts and jiu-jitsu and MMA. Like somebody's whole identity is tied up in being, I'm the champion of this organization. And then they lose that belt.
Oh, right.
And then they were so wrapped up in that being their identity that then they don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Like famously, Ronda Rousey became suicidal.
Right.
When she lost her UFC belt, because she was so wrapped up in that's who she was, that when that was taken away, a lot of self-reflection and things, and then she came to realize with help and support from loved ones and things that she was enough. Like she didn't have to be the UFC champion to have value.
Yeah. And
so it gets easy to tie a lot of our self-worth with these certain ideals or these things or achieving this job or this career accolade and things. You have to realize that you need to be comfortable with who you are when all that stuff's stripped away and you're, alone in a room for 5 hours. It's like, am I still happy with who I am, or
Right.
do I need all those things to be who I am?
Perfect.
So I think that's where we'll leave off today. If people want to connect with you on social media, I know your Instagram is at Who is John Garnett.
Right. Such a deep question.
It's a deep question.
Right.
We're working on the answer.
Right.
He's a lot different now than who he was back in the day when I knew him.
Yep.
But this newer version is an even better person.
We're getting there.
And we're still working. We're still getting there. I'm honored to call you my friend.
I'm honored too.
And
I'm honored to be
you're
here.
honored for me to call you my friend,
Yes.
or you're honored to be my friend.
You should be honored.
This
Yeah.
is my first episode back. We're gonna keep the ball rolling with the podcast.
Cool.
And I look forward to having many future guests and helping people through this podcast. I think,
Yeah.
my thing, I'm here in service to others and to help others. I think that's my purpose of why I'm here on earth. So hopefully this podcast, what John and I went over today, resonates with you in some way and can help you in some way. I'm always available, Instagram, Facebook, at James300Foster. Don't hesitate to reach out. Even if you just need somebody to listen,
Yeah.
I'm here for you. And I'm sure John would say the same thing. Reach out to him on Instagram.
Yep.
Be happy to lend an ear and provide any support.
Absolutely.
All right, buddy.
All right.
Until next time.
Until next time.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.